So I want to welcome you to the Rector's Forum. My name is Mike Kinman. I'm the Rector. And that wasn't an applause line. So if you are new at All Saints this morning or visiting with us this morning and want to keep apprised of future events and interest, there are green contact sheets near the north exit and the chapel door. Please take a moment to give us your contact information. Also on the welcome table on the lawn, you can pick up a red welcome bag. Lots of information about All Saints Church. And if you are streaming us somewhere around the world or in the cosmos, you can click on the website and you can get tons and tons of information, including how to give to All Saints Church. So while you're out there, click and make a gift to All Saints Church. This is a phenomenal experience and an honor to have today's guest with us. Someone I hope I can say I really feel like in some ways helped raise me through the shows that I watched. Norman Lear is the producer of so many of the television shows that we have known and loved, All in the Family and The Jeffersons, Maude, Good Times, One Day at a Time, Mary Hartman, the list goes on and on and on. And I have always thought of the role of the jester in the royal court was not even primarily to make the ruler laugh, but to speak the truth in a way that was sort of couched by humor. And there's a way that truth can only be spoken in a way that's couched by humor. And we've seen that in people like Tom and Dick Smothers, and we see it in people like Jon Stewart. And for generations, we have seen it in Norman Lear. His work doesn't stop there. He's wrote really an extraordinary book. I will not have a chance to read every book for every person that we have in this forum. I have read this book, even this I get to experience, and it literally was a book I had trouble putting down. And it is not just entertaining. I found it deeply moving. For how vulnerable you allow yourself to be in that book about your life, particularly your life growing up. They are going to be for sale out on the lawn. I really encourage you to pick one up. It is absolutely worth the time. A fantastic Christmas gift for someone. He is also the founder of a whole bunch of organizations, People for the American Way, the Business Enterprise Trust, and the Environmental Media Center. He is married to Lynn Davis Lear, has 6 children and 4 grandchildren. And at this point, I'm going to try to speak as little as possible for the rest of this. Would you please welcome Norman Lear?
Thank you.
I didn't know if there's anything that you wanted to say to start with, or should I just dive in? Please
There
go
is.
ahead. The floor is yours.
I want to say I've loved no man on this earth over a great many years more than George Regis. Yeah. Is George here?
Absolutely. Well, it's an honor.
Welcome to you, and you could get there too in another 40
minutes. That's right. I'm pacing myself. I read your book before the election, and since the election, a lot of what I read there has been sitting with me. The show of yours that really shaped me when I was growing up was All in the Family. And I love the way you described in the book that All in the Family was supposed to expose the absurdity of prejudice. And certainly prejudice is still with us today. And so I'm wondering, if you were going to do a reboot of All in the Family today, where would you set it, and who would be the characters?
I would set it in America.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Anywhere in America, and somebody resembling a president-elect would be the lead character, and he could be in any business anywhere. Mm-hmm. I thought from the beginning, when Donald Trump started to happen, that and we could see that people around the country supported him, that he was basically the American people tired, exhausted by the kind of leadership they had everywhere. I'm not talking about President Obama. I thought he did a splendid job struggling to do what he did against the Republican Congress that said you will not get anything done. But left or right, the American people deserve and have deserved far better leadership than they're getting from the Wells Fargos, from the iPens or whatever that pharmaceutical company is, from the Takata airbag company, from business generally. I think all the time about Dwight Eisenhower's warning. Beware of a military-industrial, and in his first draft he said a military-industrial congressional complex. And so when Donald Trump started to happen, I thought that was the American people giving, Donald Trump represented the middle finger of the American right hand, saying to leadership everywhere, screw you. Forgive the word in this hallowed premise.
Jesus said a lot worse. So.
I didn't know that.
And about the same kind of things, too. About the same kind of things.
Let's have a cup of coffee.
Yeah, absolutely. So do you think Archie would have voted for Trump?
No, I've thought about that because I've been asked that a great deal.
Yeah.
I think the episode would have ended with Archie going out to vote and the audience in doubt.
Yeah. That's good.
Not knowing for sure, but knowing for sure that Edith believed he would do the right thing.
Mm-hmm. That's good. I want to quote a couple times from your book, and this is one of the things you wrote that absolutely got me about talking about the show. You wrote, if 2,000 years of the Judeo-Christian ethic hadn't eradicated bigotry and intolerance, I didn't think a half-hour sitcom was going to do it. Still, as my grandfather was fond of saying, and as physicists confirm, when you throw a pebble in a lake, the water rises. It's far too infinitesimal a rise for our eyes to register, so we can all we can see is the ripple. People still say to me, we watched Archie as a family, and I'll never forget the discussions we had after the show. And so that was the ripple of All in the Family. Families talked. My question is, do you see anything in television and media that is challenging us to these same types of conversations today?
I can't be specific because I don't watch. People I respect a great deal are forever saying to me, you mean you're not watching?
Right.
And I watch an episode because I care so much about the person who took. And it's great. Mm-hmm. I've seen so many great things, but I'm not in the habit of watching television every evening. Mm-hmm. I'm reading, I'm writing, so I can't answer the question specifically. But when I see Orange is the New Black, or when I see so many different shows that This Is Us, there's so many, The Crown now. God, I wish I could say hello to every one of you.
Well, and one of the things I wonder is when you were producing a lot of your shows in the 70s, there were primarily 3 networks. And so, as Americans, we had a common experience of television. Maybe not everyone watched All in the Family, but there were a lot fewer choices. And now we live in an age of hundreds of networks.
Well, America's greatest product is excess.
Keep going about that. Yeah.
We export excess, and in everything, there's too much. I often think about, when I started in television, Grant Tinker passed the other day. Mm-hmm. Grant Tinker was developing Mary Tyler Moore, MTM, while we were doing Tandem and what became Embassy. Grant Tinker and I actually talked when a writer was available and each of us wanted him. we actually talked about which of the two shows, his or mine, might be better for the writer, or the actor, or the whatever. There was a calmness, Fred Allen. I can mention Fred Allen because I see a lot of gray hair here. One of the great wits and minds of the Western world. I adored him. We had a correspondence which I write about in the book, and because I wrote him sent him a Christmas card. This is the right season to be telling this story. I sent him a Christmas card. He wrote back, and he said, "Thank you for the Christmas card. I don't send them myself, but I understand the people who do like to know they were appreciated. So I appreciate your Christmas card." I wrote back to him, and I said, "Dear Mr. Allen, I don't send letters appreciating Christmas cards, but I understand people who do would like to feel appreciated. I appreciated yours." And then I had a P.S. Sam Samanow said that the andirons arrived broken. That's all. He wrote a letter care of me to Sam Samanow that was one of the funniest letters ever. And we developed a relationship over Sam Samanow, who sold andirons and ingots. His blotter and his stationery. Remember blotters? And his stationery read, "Sam Samanow, andirons and ingots. My bell if you ring it, I'll sell you an ingot." We had years of his visits when he came this way, of Sam Samanow's seminars when we were in New York. We had the leisure to write each other at length and visit with each other and talk about things that amused us and so forth. It's a very different, high-pressure time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
This could ring at any time because I told my 6 children, I will never turn it off. It'll always be on. And in this kind of circumstance, within the last year, my sister passed. I was in Bridgeport, Connecticut, at her memorial. Wasn't quite this much of a crowd, but the phone rang. Everybody heard it because it was here. And her name was Claire, and I had the presence of mind to say, "Hello, Claire?" Well, yeah, no, it's a good crowd, Claire. There's 100, maybe 100 people here. No, I don't know yet about the food. Yeah. Well, how do you get a phone up there anyway?
Oh, that's great. Well, what you described, you used a word that really stuck out, which was you had the leisure to just be with each other. And it reminds me of, I just came here from Missouri, and Jack Danforth, who used to be a U.S. Senator, would talk about how, primarily because they didn't have to be raising so much money all the time, they had the leisure to get to know each other, not just in their own party, but across the aisle. And because of that, they could collaborate in some of the same ways that you're talking about. And I don't know if we recognize the cost of the pace, the cost we pay for that.
And we don't, I think, this is a great example of everything, I believe. Just all these people coming together. This is that kind of time I'm talking about. And a community of interest and affection and respect and loyalty, and it's glorious. But I often think, there are 2 small words that we don't pay enough attention to: over and next. And when something's over, it's over, and we're on to next. And if there was a hammock in the middle between those two words, I think that's what the philosophers through the years have meant by living in the moment. The fact of my life at this moment is it has taken me 94 years, a number of months, weeks, days, hours, and minutes to get here, moving my hands this way and saying what I'm saying. Every split second. Mm-hmm. And it has taken every split second of everybody's life in this room to get here to hear me say that and move these hands this way. Mm-hmm. Actually, add up your numbers, I'm way ahead of you. But isn't that amazing? Yeah. It has taken each of us, whatever we've been through in all of our lives, it's taken every split second to be here together now. Yeah. Is that worth something or not?
Well, and to have that moment where you can just be, and I actually heard you say that, I think you were on Wait, Don't Tell Me or something, and you told that story just as the beginning when I was leaving my last job, but I had a few months before I started this one. And that comment about the hammock in the middle really guided my time. And I had to keep myself from jumping to this, which was next. And actually what you really described in a wonderful way is what we believe about worship and liturgy, which is that it is a place where chronological time stops. And we are just here being together.
The moment.
And you said something else in your book. You said, in sort of about communities like this, you wrote, I was determined to spend my life seeking truth while, as John Henry would say, praying to be spared the company of those who have found it, which I love. And then you describe yourself in the best way I think I've heard. You call yourself an unaffiliated groper. And I'm imagining that means for truth.
Yes.
And how has, and I want to know, how has that played out in your life? And you talk about relationships. What communities of truth-seeking have you found and formed?
Well, I'm happy that at the top of this gathering, I mentioned George Rodriguez. Yeah. I guess I have been, my father went to prison when I was 9 years old, as you read in the book. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, partly as a consequence of that and missing him as much as I did, I was pretty much alone. My mother and my sister, I don't know where they went, they disappeared for the most part. And I lived with an uncle and then another uncle, and then with my grandparents. And I was pretty much on my own. But we had civics classes in public schools. They, to the extent I know, they don't exist anymore. But I learned when my father was away that there was a Constitution and a Bill of Rights and a Declaration. That I learned too after he was gone that as a Jewish kid there was a Father Coughlin who hated me because I was born to Jewish parents. And I learned about anti-Semitism and all of that. But those words of the Constitution and the fathers of our country, that's where my father away, the fathers of our country, and nothing could have been more important to me all my life. And I think there's a through line from needing to take care of myself and knowing that while my father was away, I had fathers that had guaranteed me I was to have equal opportunity and equal judgment and equal fairness and so forth, as was every other human being that walked the face of the earth. Mm-hmm. And I had no trouble dedicating. Well, I didn't dedicate myself to that. I come out of that. That's what I believe. Mm-hmm.
So now, you love George Bernard Shaw, correct?
Yes.
So can you talk a little bit about how you found Shaw and how he has shaped your life?
Oh, there's so many stories.
Yeah.
I just loved, I mean, he wrote in English the way, I remember in terms of negative feelings in my life about myself, when I discovered Shaw and fell in love with the way he wrote, I wondered if he's a writer, I have to find another word to describe me.
Yeah, yeah.
And I confess, if not me, the 9-year-old boy that's still alive and well in me, feels the same way as I heard myself say that. Mm-hmm. I can't do what he did. By the way, apropos of Bernard Shaw, I came to California in the latest model convertible I could afford in 1950, and with a child, a baby, and my wife and baby. We arrived at about 4 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon. I parked them in a motel, went out to get a newspaper. Very hard to find apartments in that year, those years. Went out to get a Sunday morning newspaper to get a lead on apartments. And I was driving off of Sunset Boulevard to follow an ad looking for it. And I passed El Centro in Hollywood. And there was a home that had been made into a theater. And there was a little marquee that said, "Opening tonight, Shaw's Major Barber." And there was a guy sweeping up in front. And I stopped, I talked to him. He turned out to be the man who was running the theater. George Foroff was his name. And we talked. He was fascinated that I had just arrived, that I had a wife and baby like 50 minutes ago in a motel. And he happened to say, and I told him I came out to be a press agent. And he said, "Well, I can't give you any money, but you can hang around here, and you'll meet a lot of people. And by the way, if you want a seat, I have a seat for you tonight." So imagine having to call my wife and child in a motel 20 minutes after they arrived in California to say, "I'm going to the theater." And but I had to. I mean, it was an omen. To further the omen, I sat down. 3 seats in front of me were taped off. As the lights went down, in walked Alan Mulgrave, great British actor, Dame, I always forget her name, and Charles Chaplin.
Right. Yeah.
In the program, I had seen the name Sidney Chaplin, but didn't realize that he would be the son of Charles Chaplin, who came in and sat in front of me. And when the show was over, there was no backstage, so all the actors came out and sat on the floor. Nobody left behind Mr. Chaplin as long as he sat there. And he got up and he thanked them for the wonderful, and it was a wonderful performance of Major Barber. And he said, "When I am as touched as I am and grateful for being entertained, I feel like the only thing I can do is pay back." So I am, in my first minutes in California, I watched Charles Chaplin. He is inebriated, the tramp, inebriated, mailbox over here, and he's trying to get to the mailbox to mail a letter in a high wind. He was hilarious. My life has been full of such fortune.
Even that you got to experience.
Even that, and this.
That's right.
I got
even
to
this.
experience.
So, you talk about, and even there, you sort of talk about the ripple effect that Charlie Chaplin, not knowing who you were, had in your life, and you talked about the ripple effect of All in the Family. This was a quote of George Bernard Shaw's that you put in your book. It said, "This is the true joy in life, the being used for a purpose recognized by yourself as a mighty one, the being a force of nature instead of a feverish, selfish little clod of ailments and grievances, complaining that the world will not devote itself to making you happy." And then you added, "My God, how those words satisfy me They make me feel like I had a great meal with everyone I ever loved at the table. I want to give you a chance to expand on that, and how have you found that joy in your life?
How have I found it? I think I've appreciated the hammock between over and next. You know, I have no way of expressing what a kick it is to be here with you, to meet you, to have you ask you. I mean, to understand that you prepared these questions, that you read the book, you were thinking about me, that these people after a full service are sitting here to hear me, this 9-year-old kid from New Haven. It's, even this I get to experience. It's just great. But the only thing that would top this, and I wonder if we can do it, if we could find a bed large enough we could all get into.
Well, it is the Episcopal Church, so never say never. So, one of the things that, as I said before, really moved me about the book is how you wrote honestly and vulnerably about struggling with your relationship with your parents. Again, I'm going to quote you back to you. You said, Isaac Newton observed that we stand on the shoulders of giants and see further as a result. Unfortunately, the giants at the beginning of life, our parents, can be emotionally and psychologically handicapped, and our fight as we grow is to separate, to find other shoulders, mentors in persons living or dead, or stubbornly to try against all odds to make giants of the emotional and psychological pygmies we were born to. Answering to life for our parents' inadequacies can choke that life out of us. And that really gives a sense of your struggle. And what I'm wondering is, how can you sum up what you've learned about how to come to terms with the inadequacies of our parents, and then also as you have become a parent and a grandparent and a great-grandparent.
And made some of the same mistakes.
Yeah, and how do you wrestle with that there? And how do you also look for, well, what do I really want to pass on?
You come here.
Yeah.
You come here and you listen to you, and for everything I think I learned growing up, the fact is at one time I had 5 families on CBS and one in Encino on Mooncrest Drive. And 90% of my attention went to the families on CBS because they just, to breathe, they needed me and the other writers. And the family on Mooncrest Drive got up, they dressed, they went to school. I often took them to school, but they sustained themselves. And they got less of me. And I mean, we've come out just fine, but I often think about that, wish it had been different, wish I had, because I have 3 younger. I have daughters from 22 to 70. A fair span. I have twin daughters at 22 in senior year in college, and a 70-year-old daughter. And they're all close, and we'll all be together in Vermont at Christmas. And some of you know John McGuire, a member of this church for a great many years. And John McGuire and Billy, his wife, 32 years we have been in Vermont at Columbus Day weekend without missing a year, a number of us, and the McGuires among them.
So what did you learn from those 5 families at CBS? What did they teach you?
What did they teach me? Well, basically I learned think I learned how to be a human being.
In what way?
Because they were a variety of human beings, from Maud to George Jefferson to Edith. And by the way, you know how we thought of Edith?
No.
Whenever there was a problem, what would Christ do?
Oh, wow.
That was Edith.
Wow.
As best as we could figure out. And the two episodes of All in the Family that I cherish the most was Edith lost her faith because there was a transsexual in the show that we had appeared a couple of times in the show, who came about in an episode in which Archie was driving a cab, gave mouth-to-mouth resuscitation at night to a woman in the back of the cab who came to thank him and turned out to be a guy. And of course, Edith met him first at the door, fell in love with him, her. It didn't matter. I mean, that was Edith.
That's Jesus.
And when he was in a subsequent episode, because we wanted to deal with Edith's loss of faith, how would she lose her faith if this character she loved was indiscriminately killed because of who he was? She couldn't believe in a God that would do that. And that's what happened, and that gave us the first episode. Now we tried to figure out, how did she get her faith back? And we couldn't. It took weeks and weeks. I recall a member of the philosophy department at UCLA coming to speak with us. We were wrestling for a way, what had happened. And then somebody asked the most innocent of questions, weeks later. By the way, what happens to Archie when Edith loses her faith? And we had the answer in a flash. Archie's depended on Edith's strength, which she derived from her faith. And we had it, and it was the loveliest two-parter.
Wow. And so how did she end up getting...
She regained her faith when she saw that Archie...
She saw that Archie...
And that Archie depended on her. I forget exactly how we turned that to happen, but...
It sounds like an incredible... I mean, you kicked ideas around. You had a writer's room or whatever sort of thing that you had. You know, what amazing conversations. You know, you're having philosophical, metaphysical conversations while you're putting together the story for a half-hour sitcom. It's got to be an extraordinary experience.
Well, we were instructed to read a couple of papers and pay a lot of attention to our children and our mates. And, to deal with what was happening in our homes, up the street, down the street, across the street from one another. And we did, that's exactly what we did.
Good. 5, okay. I'm trying to figure out where, I want to jump back into for politics just as we end, and really politics and the media. Again, something you wrote in your book. You said, our political leaders have began appealing to their constituencies more as consumers than citizens, and the disease of short-term thinking soon infected the government as well. Advertising, observed historian Stuart Ewan, has become the primary mode of public address. This was one of the many places in your book when I was reading it, my head was just sort of nodding up and down vigorously. You've watched this happen over a period of time, and my question is, have we reached a tipping point where we can't go back? And if not, what might going back to actually treating people as citizens and not consumers look like?
Eric Schneiderman, the Attorney General of New York, was at the House the other evening. We had a bunch of people over to hear him. And everybody that came was, people talked about losing a lot of sleep in recent days and so forth, and expected him to have a lot to say, but he was going to talk about a gloomy moment. But he didn't. He talked about what we could do. He pointed out that the right had organized around 50 states, that such as the Koch brothers over years have funded the takeover of the thinking of local politicians, which is easier, one by one certainly easier than the national figures. And by virtue of controlling just a handful of states, they control the electoral college and so forth. And so he was full of hope that we would start dealing with the states we live in and the states we come from, where we have, expect to have representation. And was full of hope that there was something we could, each of us, do. And I believe so long as, and there is something each of us can do, and there is something each of us is doing every day in our lives just by virtue of helping one another, by virtue of making, given the size and scope of the Creator's enterprise here, this being a planet among a billion, in a universe of which there also, they say, science tells us, could be a billion. Yeah. Can you get if there's anybody in this room that parked a car this morning and made somebody smile, or had a moment with a child, or just did one little thing that made something more pleasant for another human being, in the great scheme of the Creator's enterprise here, can you get your fingers close enough to measure the difference of the impact? I say, make that child happy. Give that parking attendant some reason to feel better about his day. The slightest. And you can't get your fingers close enough to measure the difference between that act and Jonas Salk. Or Norman Lear.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's a wonderful way to leave, and I want to say, as someone whose life has been an amazing series of those moments that have brought joy to so many, we want to thank you not just for being here today, but for all the joy that you have brought us and for the joy yet to come. So thank you very much. But hold on. Wait, he wants one more thing. Give him one more thing. Hold on.
One more thing. I just want...
Then we're going to clap for you.
I just want to say my associate, Laura Bergthold, who had some idea of what you were going to ask me and everything else, told me yesterday that of all the questions that she'd ever seen in advance, yours were the most well. And I sat here, I couldn't appreciate more.
Well,
your work.
Thank you. Norman Lear, everybody.
Thank you.